Los Angeles once stood as a shining beacon of opportunity and glamour. Behind its gleaming skyscrapers and palm-lined boulevards, however, lies a fragmented security infrastructure that has left millions vulnerable to threats hiding in plain sight. Why has America's second-largest city become an experiment in security failure? What happens when 10 critical systems designed to protect us collapse under the weight of bureaucracy and neglect? The answers will disturb you more than you might expect. I remember walking through downtown Los Angeles just 5 years ago, when everything still felt safe and controlled. Today, the same streets tell a different story. The security cameras still hang from their posts. The uniformed officers still patrol their designated routes. But something fundamental has changed. As one former security advisor whispered to me during our interview, the entire system is held together with duct tape and prayers. But wait until you hear what authorities themselves have admitted behind closed doors. Every day, thousands of Angelenos pass through security checkpoints, board trains, send their children to schools, and place their faith in systems designed to protect them. Most have no idea these systems have been compromised for years. The evidence isn't hidden in classified documents or conspiracy theories, it's buried in public records, oversight reports, and the testimonies of insiders who can no longer stay silent. What they reveal paints a disturbing picture of a city where security has become theater rather than substance. "We're not prepared," confessed a senior law enforcement official who requested anonymity. Not for a major attack, not for a coordinated breach, not even for the threats we already know are coming. This admission came after 3 hours of conversation about the state of Los Angeles' security infrastructure. The deeper we dug, the more alarming the revelations became. 10 critical systems, from airport security to emergency response networks, are failing, and city officials have known about these vulnerabilities for years. The first failure sits at the very heart of the city's transportation network. Los Angeles International Airport processes over 62 million passengers annually through a security system plagued by malfunctioning equipment and insufficient staffing. Internal documents reveal that critical high-tech security doors, the ones separating public areas from restricted zones containing electrical vaults and communication centers, frequently fail to operate as designed. "These doors are supposed to be our first line of defense," explained a former security contractor. "When they don't work, we're blind to who's coming and going in our most sensitive areas." More troubling still are the so-called 107 ACOMS doors that control access to the airport tarmac itself. These specialized portals should automatically alert police dispatchers when breached, allowing immediate response to potential threats. Yet, according to multiple sources within airport operations, these critical systems regularly malfunction, creating security gaps that remain unaddressed for hours or even days. Meanwhile, with approximately 100 officers deployed across the sprawling terminal complex during each shift, the airport police force remains stretched dangerously thin, unable to adequately cover all security hotspots. The implications extend beyond theoretical risks. In 2013, a lone gunman entered Terminal 3 and killed a Transportation Security Administration officer before wounding 3 others. The shooter moved 300 yards through the terminal before being stopped, exposing critical response time delays and coordination problems. 9 years later, an internal security assessment found that many of the same vulnerabilities persist, masked by superficial improvements and bureaucratic assurances. "We keep addressing symptoms instead of the disease," said a veteran airport security coordinator. "We add more cameras, more officers, more screening points, but the fundamental coordination issues remain unresolved." A former airport security official, speaking on condition of anonymity, described regular penetration tests that exposed alarming gaps in the system. "We would send undercover testers through with prohibited items, and they'd get through more often than anyone wants to admit," he revealed. Even more concerning were the tests of employee access points, service entrances, loading docks, staff-only areas. Those failed consistently, and those are the vulnerabilities that truly keep security experts up at night. But the airport represents just one fragment of a fractured security landscape. Downtown Los Angeles, with its concentration of government buildings, financial institutions, and critical infrastructure, faces equally serious challenges. Following the September 11th attacks, building owners commissioned extensive security assessments, identifying vulnerabilities that could leave high-rises exposed to both conventional threats and terrorist activity. 2 decades later, many of those same vulnerabilities persist, hidden behind a veneer of enhanced security measures that fail to address fundamental structural weaknesses. The Rand Corporation's analysis of high-rise security in Los Angeles identified explosive and incendiary devices as significant potential threats, yet coordinated response protocols remain inconsistent across buildings. Private security forces operate under varying standards, with minimal oversight and inconsistent training. Communication systems designed to alert occupants during emergencies suffer from dead zones and compatibility issues. Perhaps most concerning, according to former security personnel, is the lack of coordinated evacuation planning between adjacent structures, creating potential for chaos during a major incident affecting multiple buildings simultaneously. I spoke with Elena Gonzalez, who worked security in one of downtown's iconic skyscrapers for 7 years. The public thinks because they go through a metal detector and show ID that the building is secure, she told me. They don't see how many contractors come and go without proper vetting, how many times security protocols get bypassed for convenience, or how outdated some of the emergency systems are. When asked if she would feel safe working in the building today, she paused before answering. Let's just say I'm glad I took a different job. The city's port facilities, handling more than 40% of all container imports entering the United States, constitute the third major security failure. Despite their critical economic importance, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach represent tempting targets with devastating potential consequences. The concentration of so much trade through these facilities creates national security and environmental vulnerabilities that extend far beyond Southern California. When you funnel that much critical infrastructure through a single geographic area, you're essentially creating a single point of failure for the entire system, noted a maritime security expert who's consulted for the Department of Homeland Security. The vulnerabilities become painfully apparent during periods of heightened shipping activity. As of late 2021, over 100 ships regularly anchored offshore awaiting berth, each representing a potential security risk inadequately monitored by stretched port authorities. The environmental security implications became clear when an anchor from one of these waiting vessels likely caused an oil spill that released 132,000 gallons of crude oil into the Pacific. The congestion isn't just an economic problem, explained an environmental security specialist. It creates cascading security and environmental risks that our current systems simply weren't designed to handle. More shocking still is what we discovered about the port's cyber defenses. According to official statements, the Port of Los Angeles faces approximately 40 million cyber attacks every month, double the number since before the pandemic. These attacks, originating primarily from Russia and Eastern Europe, constantly probe for weaknesses in systems controlling everything from cargo tracking to physical security infrastructure. While the port has invested millions in a cyber resilience center and partnered with the FBI, insiders question whether these measures can keep pace with increasingly sophisticated threats targeting critical maritime operations. Think about what's at stake, urged a cybersecurity expert who's worked with several port authorities. These systems control the movement of containers, the scheduling of ships, the loading and unloading of cargo worth billions of dollars. A successful attack could paralyze operations for days or weeks, with ripple effects throughout the entire supply chain. The port's Cyber Resilience Center represents a step in the right direction, but sources close to the operation describe it as perpetually playing catch-up against evolving threats that grow more sophisticated with each iteration. The fourth security failure extends into the digital realm that touches every aspect of Los Angeles life. In September 2020, cybersecurity auditors testing the Los Angeles Unified School District's defenses managed to trick employees into sharing passwords and executing malicious code. They gained access to social security numbers and sensitive personnel information with alarming ease. Just 2 years later, those vulnerabilities materialized into a devastating ransomware attack that compromised the nation's second-largest school district. There isn't a culture or history or regulatory expectation that schools provide that sort of protection in any way like we would hold banks or hospitals to, explained a cybersecurity expert familiar with the breach. The school district's response involved establishing new security protocols and investing in additional technological safeguards. Yet, according to insiders familiar with the remediation efforts, many of the most critical weaknesses remain unaddressed, particularly those involving human factors and organizational culture. You can implement all the technical controls in the world, noted one IT security professional who worked on the district's recovery efforts, but if you don't change how people think about security, how they handle sensitive information, you're just waiting for the next breach to happen. Parents like Sofia Martinez feel the impact directly. My children's personal information was compromised, and nobody could give us straight answers about what was stolen or how it might be used, she recalled. The district sent generic emails telling us not to worry, but then we started getting phishing attempts targeting our family specifically. How am I supposed to trust that they've fixed the problem when they couldn't protect my kids' data in the first place? This pattern of known vulnerabilities, followed by predictable exploitation, repeats across Los Angeles' security infrastructure. The fifth failure can be found in the city's mass transit system, where crime has risen steadily despite significant investments in policing. Metro has spent over $1 billion on security enforcement over 7 years, yet passengers continue to report feeling unsafe. Metro has spent over $1 billion over the last 7 years on a failed strategy of policing, said one transportation advocate. The agency is now creating its own police force at substantial additional cost, despite questions about whether armed enforcement represents the most effective approach to transit safety. The human impact becomes evident in conversations with daily riders. Michael Saucedo, who has used Metro since he was 17, describes his strategy. Honestly, I just keep to myself. I'm accustomed to it. This resignation to potential danger represents a troubling normalization of insecurity that affects quality of life throughout the system. Other major transit authorities have faced similar challenges. The Bay Area Rapid Transit System in San Francisco has increased patrols and arrests, yet still fails to meet its safety targets, with crimes against passengers trending upward despite enhanced enforcement efforts. Some experts advocate for alternative approaches focused on addressing root causes of transit insecurity. Alfonso Directo Jr. of the Alliance for Community Transit Los Angeles argues that care-based safety strategies could prove more effective than traditional policing. With an estimated 1,000 people experiencing homelessness on Metro property on any given night, addressing underlying social issues could potentially improve security outcomes more effectively than enforcement alone. Yet the political momentum continues to favor conventional policing solutions, despite their documented limitations and high costs. The sixth failure lies in the fragmentation of emergency response systems. When an active shooter attacked Los Angeles International Airport in 2002, the incident exposed critical gaps in jurisdiction and coordination. The Transportation Security Administration claimed it had no authority to respond because the shooting occurred at ticket counters outside its operational area. Instead, an airline agent subdued the attacker while local police secured the scene. 2 decades later, similar jurisdictional ambiguities persist, creating potential delays during the critical first minutes of an emergency, when coordinated response matters most. A former TSA supervisor described the challenges in stark terms. There are so many agencies with pieces of the security puzzle: TSA, Airport Police, LAPD, FBI, Customs and Border Protection, and each has its own protocols, communication systems, and chains of command. During a crisis, that fragmentation costs precious minutes when seconds count. Efforts to streamline coordination through joint training exercises and unified command structures have shown promise, but implementation remains inconsistent and dependent on the priorities of individual agency leaders. This jurisdictional complexity extends beyond the airport to emergencies throughout the city. Los Angeles County contains 88 incorporated cities and numerous unincorporated areas, each with varying emergency response capabilities and mutual aid agreements. During major incidents like wildfires or earthquakes, this patchwork creates coordination challenges that can delay critical services. "We're not talking about minor administrative issues," emphasized a veteran emergency manager. "We're talking about life and death decisions that need to happen in real time, across jurisdictional boundaries that most residents don't even know exist." The seventh failure involves Los Angeles's vast network of surveillance systems deployed across public spaces, government facilities, and transportation hubs. While thousands of cameras monitor city streets, parks, and buildings, the infrastructure connecting these systems remains disjointed and vulnerable. A recent assessment by cybersecurity experts identified numerous access points where determined attackers could potentially manipulate or disable surveillance networks. "It's not just about having cameras everywhere," explained one security consultant. "It's about ensuring the integrity of the entire system, from the cameras themselves to the networks that transmit their data to the facilities where that information is stored and analyzed." Privacy advocates have raised additional concerns about the proliferation of surveillance technologies without corresponding oversight or transparency. The Los Angeles Police Department has deployed facial recognition software, automated license plate readers, and other advanced monitoring tools with minimal public discussion about their implications or limitations. "We've created a surveillance infrastructure with extraordinary capabilities but inadequate safeguards," noted a civil liberties attorney who has studied the city's security systems. "The question isn't just whether these systems work as intended, but who controls them and what happens to the data they collect." During the wildfires that ravaged Southern California in early 2025, these surveillance vulnerabilities intersected with another critical security gap: the inability of private security contractors to coordinate effectively with public agencies during emergencies. When wealthy homeowners in Pacific Palisades sought to deploy private security teams to protect evacuated properties, bureaucratic barriers prevented timely access to restricted areas. "I sat on hold for 45 minutes with the LAPD with nobody ever picking up," reported one security firm CEO. This communication breakdown left high-value properties vulnerable to potential looting, while available security resources remained sidelined by procedural obstacles. The eighth security failure extends to the physical protection of critical infrastructure like power stations, water treatment facilities, and communication centers. Despite their vital importance to city operations, many of these facilities operate with outdated security protocols and insufficient protection against both physical and cyber attacks. A former utility security manager described finding gates left unlocked, minimal perimeter monitoring, and outdated access control systems at facilities responsible for delivering electricity and water to millions of residents. "We're talking about sites that, if compromised, could disrupt essential services across the entire metropolitan area," the manager noted. Yet in some cases, their physical security wouldn't stop a determined teenager, let alone a coordinated attack. The cascading effects of infrastructure vulnerabilities became apparent during recent power outages affecting portions of the city. When backup systems failed at several critical facilities, essential services experienced disruptions that rippled through interconnected systems. Hospital backup generators faltered, traffic signals malfunctioned across multiple districts, and water pressure dropped in several neighborhoods, all from a relatively minor initial disruption. "These systems are far more interdependent than most people realize," explained an infrastructure security specialist. "A failure in one area can trigger unexpected consequences elsewhere, especially when backup systems haven't been adequately maintained or tested." Community organizer Darnell Washington has witnessed these failures firsthand in South Los Angeles. "When the power goes out in Beverly Hills, it's back on in an hour," he observed. "When it goes out in our neighborhood, we might wait days with no clear information about what's happening or when it'll be fixed. If there's a serious emergency, I honestly don't know if we'll get the help we need in time." This disparity in service reliability and emergency response highlights another troubling dimension of Los Angeles's security landscape: the uneven distribution of both vulnerabilities and protections across different communities. The ninth failure centers on emergency notification systems designed to alert residents about everything from natural disasters to active threats. Tests conducted by the Department of Homeland Security revealed significant gaps in coverage, with certain neighborhoods receiving delayed warnings or no alerts at all during simulated emergencies. These disparities often fall along socioeconomic lines, with lower-income areas experiencing the most significant notification failures. When seconds count during an emergency, these systems need to work flawlessly for everyone, said a former emergency management official. Right now, we can't guarantee that, and that means some communities are being left vulnerable simply because of where they live. The city has invested in multiple notification platforms, including wireless emergency alerts, traditional sirens, social media messaging, and automated phone systems, yet integration between these systems remains problematic. During recent evacuation orders related to wildfires, some residents received contradictory instructions from different official sources, creating confusion during critical moments when clarity was essential. Others reported receiving alerts hours after they should have evacuated, or no official notification at all despite being in designated danger zones. Local journalist Maria Estevez, who has covered emergency response issues for 15 years, described a troubling pattern. After every major incident, fires, floods, earthquakes, officials promise to fix the notification problems before the next emergency. They upgrade systems, run new drills, issue reassuring statements. Then the next disaster hits and we see the same failures repeating in slightly different forms. It's a cycle of institutional amnesia that puts lives at risk. The 10th and perhaps most troubling security failure involves the coordination between local, state, and federal authorities responsible for protecting Los Angeles. Despite numerous initiatives aimed at improving communication and joint operations, fundamental barriers to effective collaboration persist. Different agencies maintain separate communication systems, follow distinct protocols, and operate under varying jurisdictional authorities, creating potential for confusion during crisis situations when clear lines of responsibility are essential. We've built a security apparatus that's incredibly complex but not necessarily effective, explained a retired FBI agent who specialized in counterterrorism. The right hand often doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and that creates dangerous gaps that sophisticated threats can exploit. This coordination challenge became painfully apparent during recent immigration enforcement operations that triggered widespread protests across Los Angeles. Federal authorities deployed troops without fully consulting state officials, creating confusion about command structures and operational boundaries. What is happening in Los Angeles is not law enforcement, it's occupation, wrote one legal observer, highlighting the constitutional questions raised by the federal response. When agencies operate at cross purposes or without clear coordination, public safety suffers regardless of the specific circumstances. A senior counterterrorism analyst who has worked with multiple agencies in Los Angeles described the situation as a perfect storm of complexity, bureaucracy, and institutional inertia. Despite genuinely dedicated professionals throughout the system, structural barriers to effective coordination persist. We have liaison officers, joint task forces, memoranda of understanding, shared intelligence centers, all the mechanisms you'd want for interagency cooperation, the analyst noted. But when real crises hit, old habits and institutional rivalries often reassert themselves, undermining all that careful preparation. What makes these failures particularly alarming is that they're well documented and acknowledged within the agencies responsible for them. Internal assessments, government reports, and expert analyses have repeatedly identified these vulnerabilities, yet meaningful reforms remain elusive. Budget constraints, bureaucratic inertia, and competing priorities continue to delay essential security upgrades, leaving Los Angeles exposed to threats that grow more sophisticated with each passing year. Consider this reality. As you drive across Los Angeles today, you'll pass through multiple security jurisdictions, each with its own capabilities, limitations, and blind spots. Your safety depends not on a unified, coordinated system, but on a patchwork of agencies and technologies that often fail to communicate effectively with one another. It's a fragmentation that creates vulnerability, and opportunity for those looking to exploit weaknesses in the system. Some officials have begun speaking more openly about these challenges, recognizing that public awareness represents the first step toward meaningful reform. "We can't fix what we won't acknowledge," said a senior city administrator who's worked to improve emergency response coordination. "For too long, we've avoided frank conversations about our security vulnerabilities because we didn't want to create panic or expose weaknesses. But that approach hasn't made us safer. It's just allowed problems to fester out of public view." The human cost of these security failures becomes apparent in conversations with Angelenos who've experienced the consequences firsthand. Maria Delgado, a mother of 3 who commutes daily on Metro, described feeling increasingly unsafe during her trips to and from work. "I used to feel comfortable taking the train at any hour," she recalled. "Now I find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, especially after dark. It shouldn't be this way in a modern city." Small business owner James Chen shared similar concerns about cybersecurity threats targeting his downtown store. After falling victim to a sophisticated credit card skimming operation that compromised customer data, he discovered that similar attacks had been documented across the city for years without adequate warning to merchants. "I felt completely unprepared," Chen said. "If I'd known this was happening to other businesses in my area, I could have taken precautions. Instead, I learned the hard way, and my customers paid the price." Former emergency dispatcher Letitia Johnson witnessed the coordination challenges from inside the system. "We'd get calls that should have gone to another agency, or situations where multiple departments would respond to the same incident without clear leadership," she explained. The public has no idea how much time gets wasted sorting out who's in charge or which protocol to follow, especially during complex emergencies that cross jurisdictional lines. For teacher Robert Alvarez, the school district's cybersecurity failures created lasting concerns about institutional trust. "They kept telling us everything was fine after the ransomware attack, but then we'd discover new problems weeks later," he said. "Eventually, you start wondering what else they're not telling us. What other vulnerabilities exist that they're not addressing?" That uncertainty affects how we approach everything from email to student records. We assume the systems are compromised and act accordingly. These personal stories reflect a broader pattern of consequences flowing from systemic security failures. When essential protections break down, it's ordinary citizens who bear the impact, whether through direct harm, increased anxiety, or the gradual erosion of trust in institutions meant to keep them safe. That erosion of trust itself becomes a security vulnerability, making community cooperation with law enforcement more difficult and reducing public vigilance at times when it matters most. Yet amid these troubling realities, there are also signs of progress and resilience. Innovative security approaches are emerging from collaboration between public agencies, private sector partners, and community organizations determined to address long-standing vulnerabilities. The Los Angeles Cyber Lab, for instance, has created partnerships between city government and businesses to share threat information and enhance collective defense against digital attacks. Similar initiatives focused on physical security, emergency response, and critical infrastructure protection show promise, though their impact remains limited by resources and institutional constraints. The Port of Los Angeles' Cyber Resilience Center represents another promising model, bringing together stakeholders from across the maritime supply chain to share information and coordinate responses to evolving threats. While still developing, this collaborative approach acknowledges the interconnected nature of modern security challenges and the need for solutions that transcend traditional organizational boundaries. Some community-based approaches have shown particular promise in addressing security gaps at the neighborhood level. In areas where emergency notification systems have proven unreliable, grassroots alert networks use text messaging chains, neighborhood apps, and door-to-door communication to ensure vulnerable residents receive critical information during emergencies. These informal systems don't replace official channels, but provide essential redundancy when formal notification systems fail or reach limited populations. Individual Angelenos have also developed their own strategies for navigating an imperfect security environment. Neighborhood watch groups, community emergency response teams, and grassroots safety initiatives have multiplied across the city, creating informal networks that often respond more quickly and effectively than official channels during localized incidents. "We realized we couldn't just wait for someone else to make us safer," explained the organizer of one such group in East Los Angeles. "So we decided to look out for each other and work together to address problems in our neighborhood." This tension between documented security failures and emerging efforts to address them defines Los Angeles's current reality. The city stands at a crossroads, confronting vulnerabilities that have developed over decades while attempting to build more effective protections for an uncertain future. Whether these efforts will succeed depends largely on public awareness and political will, both of which have proven inconsistent in the past. What becomes clear after months of investigation is that Los Angeles's security challenges aren't primarily technical but institutional. The technology, expertise, and resources needed to address these vulnerabilities already exist. What's missing is the coordinated implementation, sustained commitment, and cultural change necessary to transform fragmented security systems into a coherent, effective whole. "We don't need new tools as much as we need new thinking," observed a veteran security planner who's worked across multiple city agencies. "The way we approach these problems is often as broken as the systems themselves." Security expert Dr. Vanessa Rivera, who has studied urban protection systems globally, places Los Angeles's challenges in broader context. "What we're seeing isn't unique to this city. It's playing out in metropolitan areas worldwide as security systems grow more complex and interdependent. The difference in Los Angeles is the scale and concentration of critical infrastructure, combined with particularly fragmented governance structures. That creates a perfect storm of vulnerability that requires equally sophisticated solutions. As Los Angeles continues to evolve and grow, the stakes of its security failures only increase. The city that once represented the American dream now illustrates a troubling reality: that even our most sophisticated urban centers remain vulnerable in ways both visible and hidden. For the millions who call Los Angeles home, and the millions more who visit each year, this reality shapes daily life in ways both conscious and unconscious, an invisible current of risk flowing beneath the surface of ordinary routines. Perhaps the most important question isn't whether Los Angeles can completely eliminate these security vulnerabilities, no city can, but whether it can acknowledge them honestly and address them effectively before they manifest in preventable tragedy. The answer to that question remains unwritten, dependent on choices made today that will shape security realities for years to come. What's certain is that the status quo of known failures left unaddressed and systemic weaknesses allowed to persist represents its own form of risk, one that grows more dangerous with each passing day. If you felt that same sense of unease walking through certain parts of Los Angeles, or wondered why some security measures seem more theatrical than effective, share your experience. The conversation about urban security can't be limited to experts and officials. It belongs to everyone who lives, works, and travels in these spaces we share. And if you found this examination eye-opening, subscribe for our next investigation that will reveal where critical infrastructure vulnerabilities may be creating the perfect conditions for a crisis no one is prepared to handle.